He's Frank Schwab. I'm Jason Fitz. It is Sunday night, and you know what that means. We are 10 weeks in. Buffalo Wild Wings was had. Football was watched, and it is time to react. And Frank, look, I know that we are 10 weeks into the season, and I am dumbfounded. I got to be honest with you, man. I watched football today, and I kept thinking, I am dumbfounded by how many bad teams. We're going to get into every game, but how many bad teams still showed up to play. Like, it is weird to me how many bad teams there are in the league, but also the fact that so many of them came out and gave a resounding effort in a win. Like, I don't know what to expect any given Sunday. I don't remember being this confused 10 weeks in any recent season.
Yeah, and then there's the Jets, right? Didn't exactly have a resounding effort. Let's put it that way. I wrote this today about the Cardinals. Last year, the Cardinals were 4-13, right? But in the last month of the season, they won games at Pittsburgh and at Philadelphia. And for everybody who says, like, oh, this team's got nothing to play for, when they win, you're like, oh, you're just screwing up your draft position. Well, look what's happened to the Cardinals this year. They obviously took that momentum with Jonathan Gannon at the end of his first year and carried it over to this year. Now they're at first place of the NFC West. So for all these teams who we just sit there and talk about, like, oh, the Giants have nothing to play for, the Panthers have nothing to play for, or whatever it is, and they really do have something to play for. They're already playing for the coaching staffs are trying to instill a culture. Dave Canales, for example, in Carolina, they're trying to get some momentum in the next year. These guys want to put something good on film. So we do overstate how, quote unquote, nothing to play for. Like, you do see that sometimes, maybe like the NBA guys will tank, teams will sit guys near the end of the season. But in the NFL, there's something to be said. There's value to be had in winning games when you're way out of the playoff race, because that can affect, I really believe, the next year going forward. Yeah,
well, and look, how many times have I said this to you? But like, teams that are bad are usually largely bad because they draft poorly. So if your concept is, I'm going to sit here and watch a loss every single Sunday so that I can get a higher draft pick, well, remember, your favorite team is probably going to blow that draft pick too. So, like, for me, I'm done sitting here trying to say, well, I want the first pick. Well, what if we get the fourth pick? Who cares? Like, at this point, I just want to sit down on a Sunday and watch my favorite team win. Thank God for me, it was a bye week. Also, this is, Frank, one of those weeks that I hate, and I will largely, I yell this from the mountaintops. I'm the one that hates international games because it takes away from afternoon games. I hate bye weeks happening all over the place randomly. And we saw that, because if we're being honest for a second, since we can sit here and say things about the league that other networks maybe can't, how trash was that 4 p.m. Eastern group of three games? They were all blowouts, and I just sat there and I was like, man, I feel like I should go give the dog a bath or like clean the house. Like, I should not waste my time watching this you-know-what that's just absolutely being shoveled down our throat as an excuse of what football's supposed to be at 4 in the afternoon.
Yeah, don't tell the bosses or anything. I'm sure they're not listening, but I did spend maybe some of the fourth quarter figuring out how to replace Nico Collins in some of my lineups. I'm like, he's out. Let me go through, because I'm like, well, these games are just dog awful. They're just terrible. Like, yes, the Jets, Cardinals should have been better, but the other games, it's like, okay, Cowboys, Eagles isn't going to be any good, and Tennessee Chargers isn't going to be fun either. So yes, the NFL, I'll give them credit. They've done a better job scheduling this year, as far as like, there's not 11 games in the early window and then 2 games in the late window. They don't do that a lot this season. They've really balanced that out. But yeah, this was not a great slate of games by any means, especially those late games were just terrible.
We're going to be honest. I may have hopped on the walking treadmill and side-screened Holiday Baking Championship. So there we go. Like, that's what's happening right now. All right, let's get to Sunday Night Football, where, let me just ask you this, Frank. How good do you have to be as a team that your starting quarterback can throw 5 interceptions in the game, everything can go wrong, and you can still beat a playoff team on the road, which is exactly what the Lions just did?
In a weird way, Fitz, this was the Lions' statement game to the rest of the NFL, in that, hey, we could play not our B- game, not our C- game, maybe your D- game, and we could still beat a first-place team, like you said, on the road. Like, this is a Lions saying we're that good. Like, if you can't beat them with them playing like that, when are you going to beat them? And I know the Buccaneers did beat them once, so they're not undefeated or anything, but this further solidifies the notion this is the best team in football. Because, again, Jared Goff is not going to throw for 5 interceptions again in a game this season. He had 4 coming in for the entire year. This is just an off game for him. And you can tell early on, it was just off. Everything seemed off. And we've watched enough football. Everybody listening has watched enough football to know sometimes it's just not your night. You just tell, like, okay, the Lions are going to get blown out tonight. It's 23-7 at the half. No big deal. It happens to every team. The NFL's tough to win every single game, especially on the road. I can't remember too many games turning back around like that, where you're just like, by the end of the game, you just kind of knew they needed to kick that 58-yard field goal, or at least try. The Texans did with Fairbairn, A, because he's a really good long-distance kicker, but B, because I think if that game extended any longer, the Texans knew they weren't going to win. It was over. They needed to hit that 58-yard field goal to win the game. You could have punted in that situation and tried, but I think the Texans were just like, we can't beat this team. The tide has turned, the river's flowing one way, and we can't get it back. And if our only chance right now is hit a 58-yard field goal. It just seemed like a desperate team that knew we're playing the best team in football. We can't beat these guys. And that's why I think D'Amico went for the field goal there. Again, Fairbairn's had a great year from long distance, so it makes sense. But man, it was pretty shocking the way that game turned around.
Yeah, I mean, it's just shocking to see the Texans miss the long field goal, and then to see just two kicks that were made. They showed the replay of the game-winning kick, and you could actually see the ball hit the flag that's attached to check the wind. Like, that's how close that thing was. I feel like it's probably pretty fair to also mention that there was, for all that the Lions did wrong, there was a defensive pass interference. It was definitely missed in the end of that game. Yet again, we have a bad call by an official that certainly would have changed that field goal that they were going for, would have extended the drive, could have extended the game. Whole outcome looks a little different because of a blown call. I don't love that
Although I will say this, Fitz, the receiver stops his route, basically. He just kind of paused his route. So, of course, you could run into his back. Like, I don't like rewarding that. You know, like, it just,
that's fair.
He's coming across the middle. He kind of stops. Well, of course, the quarterback's going to hit him in the back. Like, if you're giving out that call, then every receiver in the world is going to do that all game. Like, so I didn't mind that no call. I get that they were on the broadcast saying, hey, that should have been pass interference. I'm okay with that being a non-call.
When you played as sloppy as both teams played leading up to that point, I don't have a hard time saying, hey, sometimes calls go your way, sometimes they don't, right? Like, both of these teams had moments that they would love to get back. Like, both quarterbacks had, for me, interceptions come sometimes, and sometimes they're great defensive plays. Both of these quarterbacks had boneheaded throws also, right? This was just not a
I think every single one of Goff's interceptions, except for the one where his arm got hit, every one of them was like, what on earth are you doing, Jared? Like, every one of them, and Stroud too. Stroud made two horrific plays in the second half. The one coming out of the second half when Dan Campbell's talking about needing to get a takeaway to get one, and then just absolutely missing Tank Dell. Like, again, like we've talked about CJ Stroud, his sophomore year has not been as good as his rookie year. Like, that's obvious at this point. And you could see it tonight. Like rookie year, CJ Stroud doesn't miss Tank Dell wide open in the end zone, but he waited. They got nothing on that pass. It gets picked off. Yeah, both quarterbacks, honestly, were bad in this game. I think that's fair to say.
I still believe in the Texans, but I believe even more in the Lions than ever, just watching them figure out how to win that game.
Like, you're on the same wavelength as me here, where the Lions come out of this game basically saying, we might be unbeatable. If you can't beat us with us playing that game, you can't beat us. Like, we're not going to play that bad again. I feel like their confidence now has just got to be through the roof. Like, they just played their worst game of the season, and they won at the Texans, who are a pretty good football team. Maybe a little bit Fugazi. We'll see. I mean, they follow up that Jets loss by blowing this game. That's pretty bad. But I still think Texans it's a quality win. Let's put it that way. If we're the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee, that's a quality win. That's a quad one win for the Lions tonight, playing their worst possible game. This was the worst game the Lions have played going back to the middle of last season.
And even with their worst game, they clipped it off and put it on social, me saying, hey, there's no reason that the Lions shouldn't be number one in your power rankings, and there's no reason that the Lions can't win the Super Bowl. I watched that tonight and thought, man, if you can win in that situation, you're still, I'm not betting against the Lions at this point to be the representative from the NFC in the Super Bowl, and I'm not betting against them to win it.
Absolutely. And character building, too, not just the 5 interceptions. Yeah. Let's put that to the side real quick. They're down 16 points. Like, you can mail that in at that point. Because, again, NFL's a long season. You're on the road. You're playing a Texans team that had extra rest after playing Thursday night. You could go and lose that game, and it's okay. Like, I know that comes off the wrong way, but you know what I mean. Like, it would have been perfectly reasonable for them to lose that game tonight. But they're down 23-7 at the half, and Houston's getting the ball to start the second half. for them to come back at all and win that game, regardless of the 5 interceptions, we've talked about that a million times, just coming back from 16 down. I don't think they'd ever done that in the Dan Campbell era. They showed the stat of being down 10 at half, and they had never won 0-12 or whatever it was. Just that is character building to the point of, look, if they fall behind a couple scores to the 49ers on divisional round weekend, they'll be like, there's no problem. We've been in this spot before. Remember the Texans game. Don't panic. Let's do this. I mean, so for a team to come back the way they did with everything against them, I couldn't be more impressed. Dan Campbell's leadership showed through here. I think Jared Goff was, look, for a quarterback to just basically say, forget it. Okay, I've thrown 5 interceptions. Nothing I can do about that. Let's just throw a big touchdown pass to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Let's throw a big third down to Amon-Ra St. Brown to keep that drive alive, to kick the game-winning field goal, for him to stay in the game mentally, for this defense to keep the team in the game. We've seen defenses implode before. Our quarterback has thrown 5 interceptions. We're not going to win this game. The defense basically picked them up and said, you know what? You're our guy. We got your back. You're not playing your best ball, but we're going to keep us in this game. They did that. A complete 100% organizational win for the Lions today. I know I'm gushing, but I just am so impressed with how the Lions pulled this win off when they played their worst game of the season. They're the Super Bowl favorite right now. There's no doubt in my mind.
It's the first time since 1970 that a team has trailed by 15 or more points and thrown 5 interceptions in the game and come back to win. Whew. The best of the rest, the best game of the day that we saw, man, by far, a game that lived up to the hype. Frank, I'm still shooketh by Steelers Commanders. It was a 28-27 win. It was a game that came down to inches and Russ getting the Commanders to jump off sides. But let me tell you, for me, it was so incredible to see the Steelers, when they had to score a bunch of points, be able to do that. This was definitely for guys like me that said Russ was washed, this was one of those eat a little bit of crow days, because Russell Wilson looked really good. That offense was able to get what they needed done. Man, I was impressed by both teams, but really impressed that the Steelers were able to match them point for point.
I mean, the Steelers are good. I don't think they're going anywhere. And this Russell Wilson story is awesome. I don't think it's really not gotten a lot of enough attention. Everybody buried Russell Wilson. Yeah, there's a few people out there who claim that, I knew all along Russell Wilson was going to be good with Pittsburgh. I guess. Okay, great. I didn't. I don't think a lot of people did. This looks like the Russell Wilson we remember from Seattle. It kind of got lost the last couple of years how great Russell Wilson really was with the Seahawks. 9 Pro Bowls in 10 years. He's had the weirdest career arc of, okay, he's probably a Hall of Famer after 10 years. Completely plays himself out of the Hall of Fame with his 2 Broncos years, which were absolutely miserable. Is he playing himself back into the Hall of Fame discussion now? Because he looks just reborn. He looks like old Russ. He's playing well, confidently. That moonball he threw to Mike Williams it's just that's Russell Wilson. That's what he is so great at with the deep ball. It just seems like prime Russell Wilson again. It's so fun. I'm enjoying this because it's one of those stories you just don't see this happen very often, where a guy's left for dead at 36 years old, I believe he is, and then he completely reinvents himself.
You're our historian around here. You always pull great comps from the history of football. To me, tell me if I'm wrong here, though. Isn't there like a Kurt Warner angle to this where Kurt was everything until he was nothing, and then all of a sudden he was everything again? Like, it feels like that's kind of what we're seeing, and it speaks to finding the right coach-quarterback combination like we talk to all the time, and it also speaks to a little bit of resilience for us. Like, this is an offense that was willing to be patient and then take their shots. And when they did that, man, Russ was able to convert on those spots. And sometimes he's on his back foot with 2 guys in front of him about to just get absolutely hammered. And he's still dropping that ball, that moon ball, right into the laps of the receivers. Like, bringing out the best in George Pickens. All of a sudden, Pickens looks like that guy, right? Like, there is this moment here for me where it's very Kurt Warner-esque, where it looked like all of a sudden, no, it's broken. It was all the system. It wasn't the quarterback. And then you get that late resurgence in the career with a new quarterback or a new coach, new system, new team. And you see exactly how good the player can be.
Absolutely. Great comp. That is the comp. It's Kurt Warner, who, when he was with the Giants, we were like, oh my goodness, this is ugly for Kurt Warner. And he doesn't make the Hall of Fame without the Cardinals years, right? Like, I mean, he went there, took them to a Super Bowl, played pretty well, great chemistry with Larry Fitzgerald and all that, had some really, really fun years there. And you could I don't know where this Russell Wilson story is going, but right now, look, what quarterback play was bad today, right? Like, we saw a lot of bad quarterbacks. Is Russell Wilson a top 12 quarterback right now? I guess so. Like, it's crazy to say that when we thought he was totally done, but here he is.
If he is, then does it still make sense that the Broncos got rid of him? Is there no egg on Sean Payton's face through all of this? Like, it feels like there should be. If Russ goes out and has this transcendent, oh my God, I can win a Super Bowl moment with another head coach, do we not have to look at the quarterback whisperer and be like, hey man, you might have missed on this one?
Yeah, a little bit. I don't think Russell Wilson fits what Sean Payton wants to do. Like, that's fair. Russell Wilson is a very improvisational quarterback, see it, throw it type of guy, where Sean wants a guy to run the offense. I think he got his guy. Like, we'll talk about Bo Nix in a bit. But so I kind of give Sean a little bit of a pass for that because I just don't think they matched well. Like, that quarterback and that coach could equally be really, really good, but just not good together. So I think that's what happened. So I don't blame the Broncos too much for what happened. I do blame Nathaniel Hackett for the year before that, for sure. But we're going to look at this, we're going to look at Russell Wilson's career, if this is where he's going, and we're going to just kind of eliminate the Broncos stuff, right? We're going to say, well, the Broncos screwed that up, not Russell Wilson. Look, he came back with the Steelers and won a division title.
Really
and he did this
point.
and that. I think he should be comeback player of the year this year. I think he should be leading that race. We've talked about that before. It is just a fun story. And we talked about this with Jory on a couple Wednesdays ago, just how all of us kind of take shots and make jokes about his sunny disposition all the time. And he's a bit of he's oddball as far as quarterbacks go and NFL players go. But I think that mentality really has helped him. I don't think he ever really got down on himself. He just kept plugging away, kept working, kept doing the high knees on the plane to bring up that example. And here he is. And I just think it's really, really cool. And the Steelers, look, I thought the Steelers were going to stink this year. I think you thought the Steelers were going to stink this year. And they don't. They're a really, really good football team. And at this point, as good as the Ravens are, I'm sitting there wondering, like, maybe they can just hold off the Ravens and win this division. And the Ravens are a wild card team, as crazy as that sounds.
He's going to carve up the Ravens defense, right? Make no mistake about it. But he's going to eat against that defense. That defense, when you look at yards per play, yards per drive, you look at all of the advanced metrics on that defense for the Ravens, they get carved up by quarterbacks. And the way Russ is playing right now, there's no reason to think he will. And then, like, quietly through all of this, there's like a swagger, rightfully so, to Tomlin. Like, Tomlin is walking around the building saying, you know what? Y'all questioned me? Like, you guys actually had the nerve to question what I was doing at the quarterback position? By God, he's right. Like, there is just sort of you got us on this one, Mike. We were wrong about it, coach. Like, 100%, 100 times out of 100, he has found that special sauce in this team that has the Steelers. Like, right now, neutral field, if you're just sitting there any given Sunday, there's no reason that the Steelers can't beat everybody in the AFC.
I'd agree with that, actually. Yeah, there's no reason not to. I mean, when you got TJ Watt on defense and he's such a difference maker, that defense is so good. Offense is playing well. Mike Tomlin, if he wasn't a Hall of Famer before, he's kind of punching his card right now with this season, right? If they do go on, win a division, even make the playoffs, to say he got Russell Wilson off the scrap heap. Everybody was saying you're a fool for benching Justin Fields right now. What are you doing? Look at your record. And he's right. And the Steelers fans I know anyway, have this weird relationship with Mike Tomlin where they seem to always want him gone, but every year he's getting absolutely the most out of what his roster gives him. Like,
please, God, Steelers, I'm begging you, Steelers and Steelers fans, please, God, fire Mike Tomlin. I am begging for this to happen.
Within 30 minutes.
Like, it would take, Brady would call him and be like, hey, man, you want to come out to Vegas? Like, look, y'all want to fire Mike Tomlin? Please, just do that, and then just do it on the private jet while he's headed straight to Vegas and can't talk to anybody else. Like, that's just, if you get Mike Tomlin as your coach and you have a problem with it, that's a you thing. Look in the mirror. You've lost all perspective.
Yeah, their next coach isn't going to be as good as Mike Tomlin. I can guarantee you that, whenever he's done. And I don't think it speaks to, we talk about bad organizations a lot, right? Well, there's something to be said about, we're like, oh, the Steelers are never going to fire this guy, whatever. He can't win Super Bowls anymore, blah, blah, blah. There's something to be said for the Steelers saying, no, we know what we got in this guy. We're not, he's going to be our coach for 20 years, and that's totally fine. There's been times during the past few years when I've even been like, man, maybe it's done for Mike Tomlin here. Maybe it is time to turn the page. No, the Steelers are right. They know what they got in Mike Tomlin, and he's a heck of a coach, and they're having a really, really fun season.
And he's 52. Mike Tomlin is 52.
It's crazy. Yeah, he started so young. I mean, I remember seeing him at the combine and like he walked by and he's wearing like a leather jacket and jeans or something. He just looks like the coolest dude in the room, you know? Like,
but if he
was a young guy when he started this, yeah.
If he wants to roll for another 20 years as the head coach there, he can. Like, that is what, and in 20 years we'll still be saying, Tomlin's never had a losing season. Like, that's the one nugget we're going to hold on to. I don't know why we used that voice. I was ready to have to stand up and say, hey, I think I was wrong about Bo Nix, because Bo Nix was playing a good game today, a good game against the Kansas City Chiefs, and you know how much I respect that Chiefs defense and how much we all respect Spags. I thought the Denver Broncos walked into that game ready to just go blow for blow and just slow this thing down, play it ugly, but play it efficient, not make stupid mistakes. I thought Bo Nix was having a hell of a game. And then I realized something, Frank. I realized that the Kansas City Chiefs have clearly made a deal with the devil, because the Denver Broncos were lining up for a chip shot, what should have been the winning field goal. Everybody in the bar is like, oh my God, this is the moment. The last time the Kansas City Chiefs lost was Christmas Day last year. Don't remember who that was to, but they're lining up. It looks like they're about to go down, and we're all saying, oh my God, finally, the dam is broken. The Chiefs just can't get out of their own way. Their offense isn't good. All of these things, we were ready to come in and just sweep away with narratives. And instead, they blocked the field goal. It wasn't missed. It was blocked. It was just one of those incredible. The football gods want the Kansas City Chiefs to three-peat. And the sooner we all accept that, the sooner we'll stop pulling our hair out.
I already did that. You can imagine, obviously, as you know, I'm way too soon. I'm based in Colorado, as people who listen to the show know, and the Buffalo Wild Wings I was at was going crazy. Like, this was going to be this was a massive moment for the Denver Broncos, and they're lining up for a 35-yard field goal to a chip shot at this point, and their line gets caved in, basically. There's no, like, the Chiefs just walked to the kicker and blocked that kick. That's not on Will Lutz. That's on all the penetration in the world for the Chiefs. And yes, you just have to wonder, like, how do they keep doing this? Let's go through some of their home wins, right? Week 1, Isaiah Likely's toe is on the back line, and they win that way. Week 2, 4th and 16, and the Bengals have a questionable, but I think it was a defensive pass interference call, keeps the drive alive. They win that game. Last week, the Buccaneers probably should have beat the Chiefs. They didn't go for 2 for some unknown reason. Chiefs end up winning that. Today, 35-yard field goal, which is like 90-some% over the last however many years. It gets blocked, which you don't see that often. Just amazing how the Chiefs keep living this way. I think part of it, part of it's fortune, right? Part of it's not, because when you have Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, your record in close games is going to be better than it should. But at the same time, I don't know what to make of the Chiefs team. They're obviously back-to-back champs. They have the pedigree. They're undefeated. But every week, it's like there's just something not great about this Chiefs team yet. And it's hard to question them when they're undefeated, but at the same time, you're like, you could easily be like 5-4 right now too. Like, just a few plays, a handful of plays go the other way. And you can say that about a lot of teams, a lot of games. But this Chiefs team is not as good as its record, but yet their pedigree just gives them this benefit of the doubt that they're just going to keep doing this the rest of the season, and somehow, some way, they're gonna win 15 games in the regular season or something.
You can pull from a couple of months ago when I said at some point, winning close games isn't luck, it's part of your identity. Said it on this show about the Kansas City Chiefs. And for me, I fully agree with you that when we eventually start making the list of the worst Super Bowl winning teams of all time, I'm sure somebody will put this Kansas City Chiefs team on that list. But the fact is, this is just what they do. And none of it makes sense. Like, I can't make sense of it week in and week out, but it still continues to happen. So at some point, I just got to crumple up any logic and say, okay, I don't know why, but the Chiefs don't lose football games. And, but it's better to be lucky than good. And sometimes things have to go your way. And yes, the cliche, good teams find a way to win and bad teams find a way to lose. But if you're the Denver Broncos, man, you gave Kansas City everything they could handle, and you had that game. And then it just went away. And that's what the Chiefs do. It doesn't matter that they're outplayed for the majority of the game. It doesn't matter that it looks ugly on the offensive side of the ball. It doesn't matter that they can't seem to find a way to sustain drives. It doesn't matter that they put themselves in negative down and distance in ways that I find maddening for a team that is disciplined and good. None of that matters, because through it all, they just find weird ways to win. So I can't make sense of it, but this is like, I always say, like, using scratch-off lottery tickets to pay your mortgage. You shouldn't win the lottery twice. But there was a documentary once about all the people that have won the lottery twice. So at some point, they just keep winning the lottery, and good for them. Like, enjoy this moment, Chiefs fans, because I don't know, like, up until this point, you can make a very serious argument that this is one of the best teams of all time. I've said it repeatedly. Best quarterback, in my mind, I think right now you can make a very strong argument that Mahomes is already the best quarterback of all time. I believe that Andy Reid is one of, if not the best coaches of all time. I believe Spags is one of the best defensive coordinators we've ever seen. I believe all of that is happening at once, and I don't think any of that matters to right now. Like, this is the luckiest damn team we've ever seen. And when you're already great and you're this lucky, stick a fork in it. It's done.
You might be right. It's just crazy. It is. I used this line a few weeks ago. I could use it again. The Breaking Bad line of, how do they keep getting away with all this? It's just, that's the attitude about the Chiefs now of like, how do they keep winning like this? How do they keep winning these games? It's crazy. Let's talk about the Broncos real quick, because I thought that this was kind of a statement game, even in a loss. Like, a win would have been awesome for them, obviously, but almost a statement game about, skeptics like me who kind of say, oh, the Broncos are very good, whatever. Well, they should have. They outplayed the Chiefs in Arrowhead. That's pretty good. Bo Nix continues to improve. Sean Payton's awesome. We know that. But I wonder if this loss is going to keep the Broncos out of the playoffs, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe the Broncos are just good enough to make the playoffs. And that to be where they are, I thought they were going to be one of the worst teams of football this year. Didn't think the roster was very good. Didn't think Bo Nix was going to be great as a rookie. Sean Payton's doing a heck of a job. If they make the playoffs, he deserves some Coach of the Year votes, because this is pretty impressive what the Broncos have been doing so far.
Yeah, and Bo Nix, 22 of 30 for 215 with 2 touchdowns and no picks. Like I said, didn't make a lot of mistakes. Really efficient game out of this. They used Audric Estime as their running back. He didn't get a huge workload, but he was able to run the ball fairly effectively. When you look at some of the interesting splits, anytime you're talking about this, like time of possession was 33 minutes for Kansas City, but it was 26 minutes for them. It was for the Broncos, 16 first downs to 19 first downs. Like, all of these stats tell you that the game wasn't just even on the scoreboard. The game was even on the field. Right? And total yards, 300 for Kansas City, 260 for Denver. The smart thing that Denver has done is they built themselves a brilliant defense, and that defense is going to keep them in games. And it feels like every week, in a much slower version of this, like with Jaden Daniels, we talked about Cliff Kingsbury was sort of opening up the flower every week a little bit more. It feels like that's exactly what's happening with Bo Nix. It's just being done a little bit slower. I don't think Bo Nix is nearly who Jaden Daniels is, but he doesn't have to be. Bo Nix right now is showing that he can be Sean Payton's quarterback. And, at this point, I would not be surprised at all if in 2 years we're having the same arguments about Bo Nix that we've been having for years about Brock Purdy and whether or not it's Sean Payton in the system and how good he is. But it won't matter because this tandem is going to win a lot of football games.
Absolutely. To skip ahead to a conversation we're going to have, Bo Nix has been better than Caleb Williams, right? As a rookie.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
I don't know what it means.
Yeah, but that's
Mac Jones was the best rookie in his class, and he didn't turn out to be anything. But I think it's significant that Bo Nix is probably second best rookie quarterback this year. And a lot of us, I thought it was a good fit with Peyton. I didn't think it was awesome value or anything where they got him, but some people really trashed Bo Nix and the pick. And I thought I can see it working because Sean Payton's so good as a head coach, but I think Bo Nix is further ahead than I thought he'd be. It's pretty impressive. It is. I think the Broncos got this one right, and a lot of people are going to be wrong. And I think Bo Nix is going to be, look, again, do I ever think he's going to win an MVP or anything like that? Probably not, but I think Sean Payton can win a lot of games with this guy.
Yeah, when we get to the Bears, we'll explain why Caleb Williams isn't performing well enough. I think that's pretty obvious. Also, shout out to Eddie. Eddie tweeted us, Eddie Hassan tweeted us the SNL skit from last night about Buffalo Wild Wings.
Hilarious.
And Eddie, I was thinking about that. I appreciated you sending that because I was sitting at a Buffalo Wild Wings in Connecticut, and I'm just telling you, not far off on Patriots fans, also not far off on how Jets fans were reacting. We'll get to that later. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll keep breaking down all the action. So the morning started with just a dog poop of a game. I mean, just...
Yeah.
Here's the idea. I just want to put myself in the boardroom. All right? I'm Roger Goodell, and you are the rest of the world, Frank. You get to be the entire world. And I say to you,
that's a lot. Yeah.
I am going to sell you on why my sport's going to grow, and you're going to make so much money. It's going to be so awesome. We're going to grow the sport internationally. And one of the games I give you is Carolina versus the Giants, which even if the season wasn't where it is, you already knew 6 months ago, this game, Giants technically at Panthers, like this is like a Cards Against Humanity card that you throw down that makes the whole room uncomfortable. Nobody wants to read it. We're like, that's what we're doing. And then not only did we get a horse poop of a game, but it went to overtime. Like Daniel Jones throws the key interception. Shocking. This game goes to overtime. And all of a sudden I'm sitting here thinking, great. The only thing better for, Munich or for Germany than having to sit down and watch some of this game is watching more of this game. I don't know, man. Like
and then Tyrone
the Panthers win. There we go.
Tyrone Tracy puts it on the ground the first play of overtime. Like that's kind of fitting. Like that. Not that this game was Tyrone Tracy's fault or anything, but oh my goodness. Yeah, it was not good. I'll say this, like, look, Bryce Young continues to look better. Like he's not great yet, but he's continuing to make strides. Daniel Jones is making no strides whatsoever. That flea flicker is just one play epitomizes Daniel Jones and the Giants right now. The third one, they run a flea flicker, and two guys are wide open. Wan'Dale Robinson, there's nobody within 15 yards of him. I think Neighbors was the other one trailing, and he was wide open too. And Daniel Jones just doesn't throw the ball, and he gets sacked. You're like, oh my goodness. And you can see Brian Daboll's just like, kid, we called the right play for you here. You had two guys open. What are we doing? And I was actually shocked. I've been shocked each of the last 2 weeks that Daniel Jones didn't get lifted at halftime. I don't know if they just view that as some point of no return thing where once we bench Daniel Jones for Drew Lock, there's no turning back. We got to get it. It's over. And maybe they don't want to flip that switch yet, but I don't know what there is left to see with Daniel Jones anymore. It's over. Like this is done. The Panthers defense is terrible. It's one of the worst defenses of recent history. They had 110 yards and 0 points at halftime. Like, what are we even doing? Like, I just, again, at some point they're going to have to turn to Drew Lock just to put a more competitive product on the field because Daniel Jones there's no confidence there. He's not seeing it well. He's not executing it well. Malik Neighbors has become mostly a ghost in that offense for some reason. I have no idea why. And it's just ugly for the Giants. And the Panthers are better than the Giants. They're 3-7. The Giants are 2-8. This is just a disastrous year for New York.
So there's nothing worse when you're a musician. You're playing like 300 shows a year. Our busiest year, we were gone 300 days when I was with the band. And there's nothing worse than at the end of the year when you come running out on stage, you're exhausted. You don't really want to play a show. You walk out and there's somebody in the front row that's just sitting there with their arms crossed. They got that like, I don't want to be here. My girlfriend dragged me to this concert. And you're like, dude, I don't want to be here either. Like, it's real. It's palpable. You can feel it. That's how I feel every time I look at Dable. Every time I look at Dable right now, he's just got to like, please God, fire me look on his eyes. Like, he's like, please just end the misery. Y'all fire me. I'll take my guaranteed money and I'll go somewhere else or let me get a different like something's got to change. Dable's body language, and we joked about it on FFL, but I was watching it this morning and Dable's body language is just absolutely, completely over it. And that's just, it's such a hard, I get it. How, to your point, you can draw these plays up all day long, and if your quarterback can't execute to the wide open guy, everybody thinks you're incapable of doing your job. Like it's frustrating. So I can't imagine how Dable feels here.
I don't know if it was after the flea flicker or another play. It kind of runs the long day of watching NFL. But the sideline reporter, and I can't remember who the sideline reporter was for this game, but she said that Dable, after it was either that play or the interception or something, Dable just paced the sideline the whole time. Like he just kept pacing and pacing and pacing. And you just wonder what's going through his mind. There's a lot of the same things you just said of what can I do? Like this team, this is not working. And you do wonder if he was thinking like, do I make the quarterback change right now and see if Drew's got anything better than Daniel Jones right now? What a miserable season for the Giants. They're just a bad football team.
I loudly said on our show last week, Derek Carr is going to be a starter somewhere next year. I believe that. I do not believe that Daniel Jones is showing he has any skill to be a true starting quarterback in this league. As thirsty as this league is for a starting quarterback, Daniel Jones isn't it. Yeah. I don't think anybody's going to look at Daniel Jones.
I think he will because we've talked about but he's going to be a bridge guy. Like whoever drafts Shedeur Sanders, it's going to be like, well, we're bringing Daniel Jones on the cheap and he can play a few games while Shedeur sits. It'll be something like that. Not anything excited or proactive, just kind of I guess Daniel Jones is out there type of deal.
Quick note, by the way, the Panthers went from having the first pick in the draft by winning to having the 10th pick in the draft.
Really?
Wow. Yeah, that's what happened. Wow. Speaking of teams that stink that won, the Patriots beat the Bears 19-3. Let's get into it. Caleb Williams has taken a massive step back. He looked good for a minute. He does not look good now, and he doesn't look good for the same reason I said on this show, week 4? I said the Bears needed to just fire everybody, and Bears fans got in my mentions. They're like, you don't know ball, all that stuff. All right, who doesn't know ball now? Because it sure looks to me like Waldron and Eberflus, the offensive coordinator and the head coach of the Bears, are absolutely failing their quarterback, and they're failing him right. Every week that they are still in his ear is a week that he's getting more bad habits and is just going down this path of trying to ruin the quarterback.
Hard to argue. I mean, yeah, there was that stretch right before the bye where Caleb was playing well, but now you look back and you're like, well, it was against like the Panthers and the Jaguars, and he just caught a run of bad defenses, and he hasn't carried that over, and he looks bad right now. And I'm not saying he's going to be bad. I think he's going to be a good player, but as I wrote about winners and losers, kind of let it off with, depending on what you think of Drake May so far, Caleb Williams is maybe the 4th best rookie quarterback this year.
I like Drake so far. Do you
like Drake too? Yes, I think he's been really good. If I'm taking, he hasn't played as much as Caleb, but if I'm just saying, what have we seen on film from this guy versus this guy? I think Drake has outplayed Caleb Williams. I just, obviously Jaden's a million miles ahead of everybody, and I think Bo Nix has been better than Caleb, as we just talked about. I think Drake has played better than Caleb Williams, and you just wonder. My theme for the winners and losers was basically, I don't know if it's all Caleb Williams' fault. He's not doing anything to help himself. He's not playing well. He's taking a lot of sacks. He shouldn't hold the ball too long. He's missing throws when they're there, but he's not going anywhere, obviously. You got to fix what's wrong, and you got to do it quick. And I think the offensive coordinator change is almost imminent. Like, you just can't keep doing this. This is just ugly football they're playing. They were held without a touchdown for the 2nd straight game. First time that's happened to them and the Bears since 2004. I mean, this is just bad football they're playing. Even 2 weeks ago, they struggled to get the 15 points against the Commanders, lost on a Hail Mary. The Bears have never fired a head coach during the season. They're very, very proud of this for some dumb reason. So I don't think Eberflus is getting fired like tomorrow, but I think we all see where this is heading. It's going to have to happen because, like you said, I don't want them to ruin Caleb Williams. I don't think he's in danger of that right now, but it's certainly not getting better for him.
I know they've never fired a coach in season. They've also never had a Caleb Williams, a first overall pick that looked like he was a transcendent quarterback that you just cannot take chances with. And all I'm doing is looking around at all the quarterbacks that get screwed up and just saying, my God. And I will remind, not that Bears fans need this reminder, but I'll remind the rest of the league, everybody else listening. Shane Waldron is the offensive coordinator for the Bears. It was a less than inspiring hire by many people's estimation. Let's remember that before they hired Waldron, they interviewed Cliff Kingsbury. And it's just, I'm going to keep saying that because Cliff, we're going to always compare Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. The part of that comp that we need to focus on is at some point, Jaden Daniels had much better coaching.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of this. And what the Bears need to do is make a call to Detroit, get on the phone with Ben Johnson, and say, how much do you want? 12 million? Fine, here's 13. Just come. Come fix us. Come fix our quarterback. We need a 4,000-yard passer for the first time in our franchise history, okay? I just think they need a totally different direction here because, Caleb, it's troubling. You don't want to see, again, rookies struggle. It happens. I get it. But when you look at the other guys around the league and they're playing pretty well and are getting better and better, and Caleb Williams is backsliding, you're like, this is a little troubling. This is a Bears franchise that has never developed a quarterback, literally, unless we're talking about Sid Luckman, right? 78 years ago and stuff. This is a Bears franchise that has no good history of quarterbacks. And now you start to worry, is this a bad sign for the future if he's struggling this much? He had 74 yards passing going into the fourth quarter today against a 2-7 Patriots team coming in. It's just, I don't want to see Caleb Williams struggling like this. And since the bye, it has been really, really bad for him.
Speaking of quarterback malpractice, the Bills beat the Colts 30-20. Joe Flacco threw 3 picks today. Shane Steichen, the head coach, said afterwards, Flacco still gives us the best chance to win now. Really? Are you worried about winning now?
What do you think? Do you really think he believes that? Or is it just something you say in a press conference?
I'd like to think that Shane Steichen is smart enough to not believe that. But what are you winning now for anyway? Like, this thing's off the rails for the Colts. Like, what are you focused on? The only thing you should be focused on is saving Anthony Richardson. And look, I realized I talked to Alex Smith this week, and Alex Smith for Yahoo Sports, and Alex made it clear that he believes that you can develop as a quarterback without stepping on the field. That just the mental reps and the preparation process and learning it is all important, and that's fine. But there are serious mechanics issues with Anthony Richardson. He's got to get fixed. And if all Flacco's going to do is go in and get their asses kicked, if you're going to get your ass kicked anyway, man, at least put him in.
We talked a couple weeks ago, and I was like, okay, I get this, but I did not expect Joe Flacco to look this bad. Like, he has looked bad for 2 weeks. Like, he was really, really not good today. And now you're like, for Steichen to say that, to me, if that's what he meant, like, I got to take him face value, right? Like, he said it out loud. Like, this Joe Flacco gives us the best chance to win right now. If you watch Joe Flacco the last 2 weeks, to me, that wasn't some good on Joe Flacco type of thing. That is, Anthony Richardson's even worse than this, guys. Like, that's what I'm trying to tell you. That's what I'm trying to sit here and tell you, that Anthony Richardson's even worse than what you just saw the last 2 weeks out of Joe Flacco. And that is what's troubling to me. Again, coaches say things at press conferences they don't really mean, right? So maybe he's just like, I got to ask this question. I got to answer it somehow to get out of it. But he said it. And to me, that's saying, the guy you just saw, Joe Flacco, throwing all these interceptions, not doing anything with the offense, well, Anthony Richardson would be even worse right now. And I think that's really damning on Richardson. But I think this week, I think they got to turn back. I do. I don't know. They're in a really, really tough spot right now where you've already admitted Anthony Richardson is not playing at an NFL starter level right now. We need to take a step back, develop him in a different way. Well, 2 weeks later, you put him back in the starting lineup. Like, that doesn't make sense to me either, because you've already kind of made the proclamation that we need to do something different with Anthony Richardson. So putting him right back in the lineup, I don't know that helps you or helps Anthony Richardson get better, because he wasn't getting any better as a quarterback. So I think they're just really, really stuck here. This is a tough spot for the Colts to be in. Everybody's going to tell them, like, you should play Anthony Richardson, but they got to wonder what's best for Anthony Richardson. And if it is sitting behind, and, well, Joe Flacco throws 3 interceptions, I guess that's what they got to do. It's a tough spot. It's a really, really sticky situation.
The Bills, by the way, real quick, 8-2, and they did it without Amari Cooper. So, the funny thing is, they haven't even gotten to use. They haven't unwrapped their Christmas present, really, that they got at the trade deadline, and they're still sitting at 8-2. So,
by the way, real quick, Bills Chiefs next week. It's in Buffalo. Who are you taking? It's early.
I got the Bills. I got the Bills.
Right? Like, but the Chiefs are going to find some way. They're going to
that'd be bad for Buffalo's psyche, man. Like, if this version
98-yard Hail Mary on the last play of the game to win or something. Like, this is just the Chiefs' charm season. So I don't know. I agree with that. I think the Bills are the better team right now, maybe. But yeah, especially in Buffalo. But the Chiefs just find ways to win games. That's a good game. It's going to be a really, really fun game next week.
New Orleans found a way to win a fun game. They beat Atlanta 20-17, their first game without Dennis Allen on the sidelines. The MVS game, as you might say, 3 catches for 109 yards in the first half.
Did you know Marquez Valdez-Scantling was still in the NFL? And did you know he was on the Saints? I did. I had no idea.
No. When he caught the first touchdown, I was like, what?
Right. I was like, who's number 10? I play more fantasy leagues than I want to admit on a podcast right here. And I still didn't know Marquez Valdez-Scantling was with the Saints. I had no idea. When he caught it, I was like, oh my God, MVS. Wow. That's crazy. Then he did it again. Then he caught another touchdown. Yeah. What a good day for him, I guess.
Yeah. But a weird day for Atlanta. This was that we've talked about it before. The first week with the new quarterback or a new coach, you usually get that uptick. And New Orleans had it, and it was a good day. They had a lot of plays that were just wide open for them. It was a well-schemed day. It was a good, impressive win for New Orleans. But, man, it's just another one of those moments for the Falcons who, I said last week, I'm not sure I'm 100% in. And I just watched this team, and I thought, man, the Falcons, to me, remind me of a team that's okay, but not great. And they're just sort of coasting through a weird division.
I agree with that. Atlanta and Seattle are the two teams in the NFL right now where I feel like I've changed my mind on them every single week of the season, where I'm like, hey, actually Atlanta's pretty good. And then they lose to the Saints. I'm like, actually Atlanta's not very good. It just keeps going back and forth with me, where I want to believe the Falcons are a pretty good football team, but they're just not. Like, this is kind of who they are. They're going to lose games they shouldn't lose. And they're going to win enough to win the division, I think. But yeah, this was not a good loss for the Atlanta Falcons. Lose to that Saints team, which I believe had lost 7 in a row and just fired their coach. Like you said, there's a dead cat bounce for the new coach or a new quarterback in some cases. This is just a sloppy performance by the Falcons. Younghoe Koo missed 2 field goals. Kirk Cousins throws an interception, right? The 2-minute warning. Like, this is not a loss you should take if you're a true threat in the playoffs, because I think we both agree they're going to win that division. You're not scaring anybody if you're not beating the Saints in this game.
Are we scared now of the 49ers with Christian McCaffrey back? They beat Tampa Bay 23-20. Jake Moody missed 3 field goals. But, man, they weren't easing McCaffrey in, for sure. Like, he was a huge part of the game plan. It just wasn't there, like the usual pop. Like, Tampa Bay came with the thunder of the gods, and they weren't going to let him run on them, and they did a really nice job of that. And this was it was a fine win for the 49ers, but I didn't walk away from it, especially against the Bucs team that's just decimated. You've said, hey, Tampa Bay's not going to go away. They're going to play hard every week. They showed that again, but I didn't walk away with this with more faith in the 49ers. They just got to knock a lot of rust off in very little time.
Yeah, I feel like the 49ers are just that team I'm going to keep waiting on. It just might never get there for them this year. I look at the names on the back of the jerseys, and I'm like, this is a really good football team. But where is it? Like, you barely beat the Buccaneers, who, like you said, even they lost Tristan Wirfs in this game to go along with their receiver injuries. They could have easily lost this game with the Buccaneers punching a touchdown at the end, but they settled for a field goal. Jake Moody misses 3 field goals, and Deebo Samuel's trying to fight him on the sideline and stuff. Like, it's just been a weird season for the 49ers. They're hanging around, so it's not like the Jets where they're just done. They're hanging around. I still think they're going to win the division, I guess, but some of that is chasing a ghost, where we haven't seen that 49ers team this season. We have not seen them be dominant yet, and maybe it's coming, but we're mid-November. Like, if it hasn't happened yet, why would it happen next week? So I don't know. I don't know where I am on the 49ers. This was one of those games where it's like, okay, you won. And I know it's the Buccaneers. Look, the Buccaneers beat the Lions, should have beat the Chiefs. They're not a bad football team in any way. But at the same time, if this 49ers team is going to get going and get on a roll, you'd like better than beating the Buccaneers on a field goal on the last play of the game.
I mean, I think we can both agree that the 49ers right now are nowhere near where the Cardinals are in the same division.
Probably, yeah. I mean, the Cardinals just keep getting
probably
better.
Probably. I mean, like,
I don't know. If the 49ers play the Cardinals on a neutral tomorrow, you really pick the Cardinals? I guess you'd almost have to, but man, I don't know. Again, I'm just chasing the idea of the 49ers more than the actuality of the 49ers this season, right? Like, and that's tough. It's tough to get out of my mind that this team was so good last year. And even in the past 3 years, I mean, they've been so good. It's just weird to me that, they've had some injuries, but I wouldn't say that this 49ers team is overly injured as far as, like, compared to the rest of the NFL. Yeah, Brandon Ayuk, huge loss, but Juwan Jennings is a good player. He stepped right in. Like, every team's hurt at this point in the season. The 49ers aren't like, oh, we have 10 starters out. Like, this is kind of who the 49ers are, and they just should be better than this by now.
Yeah, you're 1,000% right. They should be better, and Arizona is better. I'll tell you why. We're going to break down the rest of the games. We'll take a quick break first. All right, so when we talk about, like, ideology of brands, so, like, the 49ers should be better, I think we've just been sleeping on the Cardinals because they're the Cardinals.
You're probably right.
I really
You're
do.
probably
Like,
right. You're probably right.
I mean, watching Kyler Murray today, who set a new franchise record for most consecutive completions, had a couple of them in there that were a little bit lucky. Better to be lucky than good. But, like, Kyler Murray was absolutely slicing and dicing, and then running around. We all know the Jets suck. All right, so the Jets suck. That's fine. Like, compartmentalize 2 different things. The Jets suck, and they're about to have one of the biggest rebuilds we've ever seen with an aging quarterback and a bunch of expiring. They have 30 expiring contracts. Like, the Jets are about to go in a massive rebuild. They suck. Okay, so now that we've established that,
bad football team. Yep.
I think the Cardinals are actually pretty good. And, like, you came into this year thinking that the Cardinals' offense was going to be dynamic and their defense was going to lose them games.
Yep.
Their defense is playing way better than like. I look at it, I'm like, why are we not buying the Cardinals other than the fact that they're the Cardinals?
I think you're right. I can't disagree with any of that. I think Jonathan Gannon's doing a heck of a job with that defense. Yeah. They still don't have a lot of star power in that defense, but they're getting absolutely everything out of that defense. And again, the Jets stink. I get it. But Aaron Rodgers had 40 yards at halftime. Like, they just shut down that offense. They scored 6 points in this game. Like, and the thing I like about the Cardinals is they won a lot of close games early, right? Like, they had that weird game in San Francisco where San Francisco loses this kicker, and the Cardinals end up winning on the last play. Cardinals end up beating the Chargers on the last play of a game. But they banked those wins, and now they're getting better. They've won 4 in a row, and every single week of that winning streak, it's been better than the week before. And this game was impressive. You're like, all right, like, the Cardinals probably aren't going anywhere this season. And even if they stumble in the second half and don't make the playoffs for whatever reason, we're going to get to the end of this season and say they got something cooking with Jonathan Gannon there. And again, that started last December when they started winning games at Pittsburgh, at Philly, playing really confidently. Gannon has instilled this culture there where they don't act like the same old Cardinals. Like, I don't think they're burdened by that. Like, where we are in assessing the Cardinals and how good they are, I don't think the Cardinals themselves are burdened with that history. I think they just have a swagger about them. We're getting better. We can win games. We can compete with anybody. They already have a win in hand over the 49ers in this division race. So, yeah, I mean, maybe this is just a team that's going to keep peaking and end up taking the NFC West, which none of us saw coming.
I mean, at this point, they have 6 wins. All right. So if the magic number to 10 for the playoffs to get 4 more, let's understand that they have the Patriots at home. They have Carolina on the road. They still obviously have the Rams, the 49ers, the Seahawks still left on their schedule. That's tough. And a Vikings team that might be imploding. So the path to 10 is there. I genuinely believe right now that the Cardinals are going to win their division. And part of it is just that they said on the broadcast, I thought this was really smart. Kyler Murray is getting comfortable with playing boring football. Just like, hey, this is the way this offense is going to work. This is the way we're going to do it. And it's working. And it's working, interestingly, even without Marvin Harrison Jr. being anywhere near what we thought he was going to be.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, if you would have told me, like, the Cardinals after 10 games are first place in the NFC West, I'd been like, oh my God, Marvin Harrison has 1,000 yards already. And not really. He had good game today, great touchdown catch in the end zone. But he's had 200-yard games, and he's had, I think, 6 games under 50 yards so far this season. He hasn't been anywhere near what we thought he'd be, what I thought he'd be. I still think he's going to be a great player down the road, but he's kind of had a quiet rookie season, and still the Cardinals are really good. Like, James Conner's a baller, tough dude. Like, he's the kind of guy who, you know, we talk about devaluing running backs and all that, and but when you got a dude like James Conner, I can see why the Cardinals kept him around, why Jonathan Gannon loves him. He sets a tone for that team, and he sets a tone for that culture they're trying to build. And Trey McBride is great, and it's just really it's fun to watch this team emerge. I know that Matt Harmon was big on them. He had them as a possible playoff team before the season. He nailed that. I just thought the defense would be so bad that they wouldn't be able to compete, but I was dead wrong. Gannon is doing heck of a job. And, you know, I've thrown out like 8 Coach of the Year candidates already, but throw Jonathan Gannon on there too. I mean, if they end up winning the NFC West, he probably wins it, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like, he'll be one of the favorites for sure. And rightfully so. The Chargers beat the Titans 27-17. Will Levis actually played pretty well. I want to give Will Levis some flowers. Played pretty well. The Chargers, though, this was just one team's far better than the other. I wish I could give you some glow. Like, Justin Herbert went out there and made it look easy. This game was never really in jeopardy at any point. The Chargers are just a better roster top to bottom. It's a 27-17 win where the Chargers were exactly who they want to be. They're throwing the ball however they want to, whenever they want to, but they're also controlling the line of scrimmage to get first downs when they need them. This is a dominant performance by what looks clearly like a playoff team.
Yeah, and this is look, I've been critical, Justin Herbert, just because he never gets criticized for anything, regardless. He did play some sloppy football before this season, but I think what you're seeing this season with Herbert is, we knew this was going to happen too. Jim Harbaugh doesn't want to drop back 40 times a game. That's just not how he prefers his football. He's going to run it, and when the quarterback needs to make a play, you need to make a play. And I think Justin Herbert, this game, he attempted 18 passes. He's 14 of 18. We've seen Justin Herbert become a very efficient quarterback. He's not being asked to do that much, and he's doing a lot more because he doesn't have the whole weight of the franchise on his shoulders anymore. He's gone more than 200 pass attempts without an interception. He hasn't thrown one since week 2, I believe. Like, this is just a different quarterback. This is the Justin Herbert I wanted to see. I didn't want to see the guy throwing interceptions in the 2-minute drill all the time and everybody ignoring it because he made a great highlight play in the third quarter. Like this is the Justin Herbert that is becoming a really, truly elite quarterback. And hats off to Jim Harbaugh on what they're building there. I thought it was going to take a while. It hasn't. They're a really, really good football team. And they're going to be a team nobody wants to play in the playoffs. They're going to the playoffs. Like, I think we both know that. Like, they're a team nobody wants to play in the playoffs.
The opposite of that is in Dallas. Everybody wants to play the Cowboys right now. The Eagles stump them 34-6. Cooper Rush, 45 passing yards. That's not a misspeak. Cooper Rush looked like he was out. Like, from the outset, he was overwhelmed. This Philadelphia defense was in his grill. He didn't have an answer for it. There was no creativity with the offense. I felt like even when he did throw the ball and get to the receivers, they were getting murdered the minute they caught the ball. Like, this was a dominant physical performance. Like, to be clear, I think the Eagles still have some issues, and they didn't play clean football all the way across the board, and they still kicked the snot out of the Cowboys.
I was looking up, like, it's not the greatest performance by the Eagles, and I'm like, wait, it's 34-6. Like, this is how bad the Cowboys are right now? Like, oh, my goodness.
It was 14-6 for a while.
They let them hang around for a long time, eventually just crock-potted them and pulled away. I mean, it's just one of those, like, the Cowboys are just not going to be competitive, and I just need to remind all the people out there that Giants-Cowboys is one of our Thanksgiving games. I mean, come on, what are we doing? Like,
it's a good time to go for a walk. Good time to get out there.
Like, a long 3-hour walk so you don't have to watch Cooper Rush. I do think they probably go Trey Lance next week, right? Like, why put up with another week of Cooper Rush? Like, 45 yards. Like, that's not even NFL football. Might as well at least see what Trey Lance can do the rest of the season.
Do you watch like an old Macy's Day Parade during that? Because you can find those on YouTube. Like, maybe we'll do that on one of our inside coverages this week. Things that we should watch on Thanksgiving instead of the Cowboys taking on the Giants. I think
such a bad game.
Feels good. And then they're going to try and tell us that, because Shabuzi's playing halftime or whoever. He's playing halftime of one of them. Like, whatever halftime act they're putting out there, they're going to try and convince us that's really the main event. Philly's got to clean it up, though. I'll just say that. Philly's
that's a good football team, though. I think they're
100%.
They were not at their best today, but I think they kind of knew they didn't need to be at their best. I think that this is the team nobody's talking about, and it's weird because it's the Eagles, right? You'd think everybody would be talking about them.
But we're in love with we're in love with Washington. We're in love with Washington.
Yes, that's the thing. We're in love with Washington, and there's other stories around the NFL. And quietly, I think the Eagles are really coming around, getting to where we thought the Eagles would be. And I think they're going to probably win the division. And I think it'll be a really, really tough out in the playoffs. Like Eagles Lions in the NFC Championship game or something like that. That'd be pretty good because I think the Eagles are going to keep. I think their arrows pointing up. I think this Eagles team is going to be really good by the end of the season.
The Eagles are legit. Sam Darnold is a fraud. We finally got it. Like, Sam Darnold, fraud watch is in full effect through 3 interceptions. A terrible Jags defense. A terrible Jags passing defense. A Jags passing defense that barely belongs in the NFL. Absolutely made mincemeat of this Vikings offense. Justin Jefferson was open and they couldn't get the ball to him. The timing on the offense was terrible. Everything that Sam Darnold was executing looked like the Sam Darnold we are used to. Frank, I am comfortable right now saying I am out on Sam Darnold. All of this talk all year about, what's it going to be for the future? Nope, J.J. McCarthy's the future. Sam Darnold is nothing more than a stopgap, and the wheels have fallen off on the entire thing.
Yeah, you just see it's the turnovers. That's always been his issue, and it's coming up now. And some of these turnovers today were just bad. And that started last week against the Colts when he made some bad plays in that game. And you're like, this is why Sam Darnold never really took off as an NFL quarterback. It's not that he can't make throws. Like, yes, he can. He's got a lot of talent. It's always just these backbreaking turnovers. Now that's popping up. They got to get that fixed right now. This was a bad win. Like, yeah, you won. Good for you. You come out of that game feeling a lot worse about yourself because you wouldn't have beat many teams in the NFL other than the Mac Jones-led Jaguars. And by the way, let's talk real quick about Doug Peterson. They threw an interception late. Somebody asked him what happened on that play. And Doug Peterson gave a very snotty answer, basically saying, I'm not even going to explain it to you because you wouldn't understand it anyway. It's like, Doug, you really can't be that smug when you're about ready to get fired and you're doing one of the worst coaching jobs in the NFL right now. The whole point of media asking you a question about what happened on that play is because we don't know what happened on that play. Yes, of course, you might want to explain it. If we knew what happened already, we wouldn't ask the question. So it's almost like Doug Peterson, like pulling a Costanza, like driving the World Series trophy around the parking lot trying to get fired. Like it's just, and Sean Khan might not even care. He might not even know he has a football team anymore. So the Jaguars are just a absolute positive mess. And the Vikings are lucky they played him today because they would not have beat many teams in the NFL other than this Jaguars team.
It becomes interesting because in my mind, I still believe that much in the Vikings defense. I do believe their defense can still scramble up quarterbacks. And I believe in Kevin O'Connell. I believe in their head coach.
Yeah,
so if Sam Darnold is playing this poorly with one of the best head coaches in the league, just look around and you're saying, okay, well, if we think he's going to go somewhere and be successful elsewhere, he ain't going to get that level of coaching elsewhere. Like, one of the best is only, like, it feels like the dam is broken and you have somebody as a Band-Aid, as a head coach that is truly one of the best at what he does. It's damaging. By the way, according to Tankathon, if the draft were today, the Jacksonville Jaguars would own the first pick. So there we go. The level of suck has taken them all the way to the top of the draft, Frank.
They're special. Yeah. I am on it. Like, I kind of joke, but I am honestly surprised Doug Peterson hasn't, and maybe will be. Like, I don't know. By the time people listening to this, Doug Peterson might be fired already, but he's got to be the next to go. It's just Sean Khan is like asleep at the wheel. Like, he doesn't really that plugged in with his team, I guess. So he's
just figuring he'll take care of it.
What happened to Doug Peterson? I think that's such an interesting question because I was there watching him outcoach Bill Belichick in a Super Bowl. That happened. It wasn't that long ago.
He got on a heater.
If you would have asked me that night, is Doug Peterson a top 3 coach in the NFL? I said, absolutely. Why wouldn't he be? And now here we are. What is it, 7 years later, 6 years later, whatever it is. And he's just awful. Like, it's just, oh my God. It's like the game just passed him by so quickly. It's stunning. The rise and fall of Doug Peterson is really, really interesting because you just don't see that kind of career arc very often.
Now, that's a Netflix pitch, the rise and fall of Doug Peterson. Like, 3 people will watch it, but it will be riveting. Monday Night Football.
Not explain plays anymore. Yeah.
The Dolphins taking on the Rams. Rams favored by 2.5 in this one. I like Miami, Frank. I'm going to be honest. I like Miami.
Really? Why?
Well, I think we've been really hard on this offense since it came back together without expecting that it's going to take a second to gel. As I said earlier today on Fantasy Football Live, the Rams can be got on the backside of their defense with great wide receivers. I don't know if Tyreek Hill is going to play. I hope he plays for the sake of this
Snapchat.
Yeah.
That's where you got to pay attention to social media these days. You know, he's like, oh, it's on now, whatever.
But this version, the Dolphins have found creative ways to lose with Tua, but their offense is moving the football a lot. At some point, I think that becomes sort of the case for them. So I'm actually high on the Dolphins here. What do you think?
I'm opposite of you. So we will have our first big disagreement of the day, I think. Yeah, I like the Rams. I just think this team's going to be really good down the stretch. Their defense has gotten a lot better. Like you said, not perfect by any means, but better, much better lately. And the offense is kind of humming along right now. And I just think they're a better team. I just think the Rams are the better football team. Yes, Miami's, they're getting better, obviously, with Tua back in the lineup, but I just don't think they're as good as the Rams. I think the Rams are going to be a really good football team and in playoff contention the rest of the way. They kind of got through that, okay, we're going to stink. We might trade Cooper Kupp. And then it's like, actually, now we're pretty good. Let's go play. Let's go win some games. I really like the Rams on Monday night.
Well, whenever we disagree, it's just a reminder, up yours, you son of a biscuit. There we go. Now we've a full-on fight that Stone doesn't even have to beep. Speaking of Stone, he's our producer behind the scenes doing God's work. We really appreciate everything he does on this show. We couldn't do it without him. You can follow us on social media at Yahoo Schwab, at Jason Fitz. Be sure to rate, review, subscribe, do all of that good stuff. We really appreciate it. It helps us out a lot. And remember, we're here every Wednesday and Friday. So we are here all week long getting you all of our thoughts throughout the course of the week. To all of you that interact with us on social media all the time, we really appreciate that you take the time to listen. I hope your Sunday was absolutely glorious, and have a wonderful Veterans Day. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us.